as we begin to share. Also, the attendees tonight you all are being muted, and only the panelists should be heard. And that's because of time constraints. We don't have enough time, and so we won't be taking questions directly either. There may be some options for you to put some things in the chat, but we won't be taking direct questions from the audience tonight. Also, we are recording this session, so we want you to know that and be aware that we will be recording this evening, and this will be available to review, should you so choose to, as of tomorrow morning. And all you would need to do is go onto our district website and get that information, and that link will be available. At this time, I would like to pause and give place for our interim superintendent, none other than Dr. Stephanie Barraz.
Good evening to everyone. I am so excited that we are here tonight. We want to welcome everyone to this event. This is the second in our series of 4 events. If you missed the first event, the recordings can be found on our website. And we're excited that we're having these discussions. Thank you to our panelists for sharing your knowledge and expertise with our community. We look forward to continuing these important conversations. What I love most about these conversations is that they are coming from our community, from our parents, from our students, from our staff. And so this, for me, is always a great place to sit in when the conversations, they come from our community as a whole. And so we're looking forward to tonight. Our moderator will introduce all of our panelists. And I have to say, Mr. Shelby, you do a phenomenal job. So I am so looking forward to you moderating tonight and look forward to many more discussions as we move forward. I hope everyone enjoys.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barraz. We appreciate your presence and your leadership within our district. Listen, you all, let's get into this. I want to begin to introduce our panelists for this evening. I, of course, as I shared, I will be our moderator for this evening. I have been with Robbinsdale Area Schools for more than 26 years, and excited to continue to work to affect change, and not only change, but success for all of our students. And let me be honest with you. I say all of our students, and I mean 100% all of our students, yet at the same time, I'm a Black father, and my children have all come through Robbinsdale Area Schools. I've got one left that's in Robbinsdale Area Schools currently, and so I want to see the success of my children and children that look like me as well. So if you could just scroll to the next screen, I want to introduce each individual panelist for tonight. The first person I want to introduce is Mr. Pierre Duncan. He is a Robbinsdale Virtual Academy senior this year. This young man has attended the Civil Rights Immersion Experience, which is it was a conglomerate of a number of school districts and various schools that partnered with North Hennepin Community College. They took a trip across the country, visited historic sites. This young man went to classes there and was able to earn a college credit while in high school for participating in that historic event. So we thank you for being here with us, Brother Pierre. Would you just wave at us and say, hey? Thank you, sir. Our next panelist is Mr. Markus Flynn. Brother Flynn is an executive director of Black Men Teach. He's also a former science teacher of Prodeo Academy in Minneapolis. He's the founder of Creating Academic Pipeline Programs. Can I tell you, if we really could, we could spend more than a half an hour just talking about these gentlemen and their what they bring to the table, what they offer to our communities. But we can only share just a little bit. He's also served prior as a research manager and project Management for Iowa State University. Thank you so much, Brother Markus Flynn. Will you wave at us real quick? Our next panelist is Mr. Jamil Jackson. Mr. Jamil Jackson is a consultant, the city of Minneapolis, violence prevention. He is also the executive director and CEO, executive director of CEO, which is change equals opportunity. He is the executive director of Run and Shoot, which is an elite basketball league. Also, he is a McKnight Foundation Unsung Hero and Award winner. Brother Jackson, will you wave at us for this evening? Thank you so much for being here. Our next panelist is Brother Kenan Jones. Kenan Jones is a fourth grade language arts teacher in Hopkins School District. This brother founded Legacy for Freedom and previously a Check and Connect mentor with Robbinsdale Area Schools. So great to have you. Appreciate what you've done across the cities as well as within our school district as well. Our next panelist is none other than Brother Tony, and I have to be respectful and be professional, but can I tell y'all, Mr. Tony Patterson is one of the coolest people that I know. I always tell him I want to be like him when I grow up. But so Mr. Tony Patterson is a part of Robbinsdale Area Schools in the Department of Achievement and Integration. As a climate and culture specialist, he has been in education for more than 15 years. He's also the co-head football coach within our district for Robbinsdale Cooper. And he's a recipient of the NCAA Living Legend Award. Brother Tony Patterson, will you wave at us, my good sir? Next panelist is none other than Mr. Charles Vickers. He is also a part of Robbinsdale Area Schools in the Department of Achievement and Integration, School Climate and Culture Specialist. Mr. Vickers has been in education for at least 19 years. He has experience as a classroom teacher, a principal, and a dean of student culture. Mr. Vickers is also the founder of Invisible Genius. And there is a TED Talk that he has. Hopefully we have that link available for you and you can be able to go and see. And that link is really dealing with the blueprint of achievement for African-American males and how to recognize genius. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, those who are in the audience for today, I want to give you to this panel of greatness. Will you gentlemen, starting with Brother Pierre, will you just at least say hello and give me one quick thing of who you are outside of what we have stated in this introduction of you? Brother Pierre, say hello to us. Give me one quick thing about you.
Hello to everybody in the panel and the attendees. And one quick thing about me is that I am both a son, an employee, navigator, and a future nurse.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And see, I didn't even have to give the brother a time limit. Look how great he's doing. Brother Jackson, give us one quick thing about you.
Yeah, I'm a Black man for one. I'm a father of 3 wonderful children that are my biological, and I would say I'm the stepfather to hundreds within the community.
Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it. Mr. Vickers, say hello. Give us one quick thing about you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm a bridge builder. That's what I am. I'm a bridge builder.
Thank you so much. Brother Jones, say hello. Give us one quick thing about you.
Hello to everyone out there, and thank you for attending tonight. First off, thank you, Robbinsdale, for giving me this opportunity to speak and speak my truth. One thing about me, I'm just 100% committed to action, to empowering the lives of African-American males and African-American students across the metro area. I'm all action.
That's what's up. Thank you. Brother Patterson, say hello. Give us one quick thing about you.
Hello, hello. One quick thing about me is I try to be authentic at all times. So it's really quick, down to the point, and that can encompass a lot of things, but I try to be authentic at all times.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Brother Markus Flynn, say hello to us. Give us one quick thing about you.
Yep. So hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here. Mr. Shelby, I appreciate you taking the time to lead this panel. I appreciate the invitation. I appreciate the work that's going in. Shannon, thank you for doing everything you're doing behind the scenes. It's the most involved Zoom I've ever seen in my life. So appreciate you for getting this together. But one thing about me, just committed to seeing the narrative shift in the Black community in Minnesota. That's it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I wanted to do that so that everyone's voice can be heard right off the top. Tonight, this is going to be a little different. Ms. Shannon, you're going to have to keep us on time because I'm telling you, the knowledge of these gentlemen here and their stories and their background, it's awesome. So how we're going to do this is going to be more of almost a barbershop type form. For those of you that don't know, barbershop form of discussion in the Black community, everything happens at the barbershop. You learn life at the barbershop. Your first, there's a lot of firsts at the barbershop. There's a lot of first cuts. There's a lot of first being indoctrinated in some of the knowledge and some of the street knowledge and some of education. There's so much that happens. You sit around and you hear what we call the OGs, the older guys, talking and dropping wisdom nuggets for us. And so tonight is going to be an educational barbershop conversation. Our theme this evening is Black men impacting change in education. And so education looks different for everyone, but that's where we're going to go. So it's going to be an open forum, brothers. When you feel led to jump in, you're gonna do that. So it doesn't have to be a specific order. I'm gonna ask one question and then we just gonna talk. All right. So our first question tonight, within Robbinsdale Area Schools, we have some affinity groups. One of the affinity groups is a Black males group. And in that group, oftentimes, this question is asked almost every session. The question is, what does it mean to you to be a Black male? So now I want to ask that question, but every question tonight that is posed to you gentlemen, the start of that question is, as a Black male, what does it mean to you to be a Black male? If you don't mind, brothers, I want to just start with Brother Pierre, and then after he shares, then the floor is open. I just want to hear from our high school student to answer this question. So Brother Pierre, as a Black male, what does it mean to you to be a Black male?
As a Black man, well, firstly, as a Black child, you grow up having to experience differences in your community. But as a Black man, you only get a single question and a single choice. Because are you going to continue being a product of your environment, a product of your circumstances, or are you going to make your environment a product of you? Because growing up Black, in whatever surroundings you're in, you're treated differently, you're looked at differently, you're held on a different standard than everybody else. But when you get to a certain age, you have to make the decision whether or not you're going to change the narrative or you're going to let people see you by the sub-judgments in their head. So when you really ask, what does it mean to be Black? Being Black is a responsibility. Being Black is having to deal with things that others don't have to deal with. Being Black is making choices at a young age that others don't have to make at all. Being Black is being judged. Being Black is being looked at as less and not having potential. Being Black is building your own potential. Being Black is showing others. What some people don't have to show or say, we have to say and show. So at the end of the day, just perseverance, persistence, and power are three things that we have to continue to evoke every day in order to be normal. But at the end of the day, we are Black. So being Black is having to continuously climb that ladder and sometimes succeeding in some steps that you're taking, but being pushed down a little bit more, but continuing to strive. So in my personal definition, that is what it means to be Black.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Panelists, the rest of you, floor is open. As a Black male, what does it mean to you to be a Black male?
I'll go ahead and jump in. You know, when I think about being a Black male, some things that come to mind is I think about, you know, Black males, we're creative, assertive, powerful, resilient, natural born leaders. I think about those who lost their lives coming over on slave ships in the early creation and stages of this nation, and how they didn't let that stop them from speaking to their people and being with their people and taking care of their people. As a Black male, I feel the, you know, the power of education and knowledge, and how, you know, they can whip, they can do whatever, but they can't take the knowledge and education away from me, and that can carry me to anywhere that I need to go. And as a Black male, I feel power. I feel power every time I think about, you know, my great grandfather, you know, who was a pastor and didn't have past the 7th grade education. I think about all that he went through to learn how to read the Bible, and to teach the community the gospel. So, you know, I carry that with me every day. So as a Black male, I just feel like we can do anything we put our minds to.
And I'll jump in. I think to me, what it means to be a Black male, it means my own personal experience. It's just being strong and resilient. You know, I just think about what the images of what's been shown on TV lately, right? We got men that look like us, murdered and hunted down in the street, and those images could be detrimental. You know, so the journey that we have, you know, we have to navigate it. We have to support each other. You know, I think that now, in my experience, I see a lot of gentlemen I see a lot of Black men uplifting each other. And I think that's just what we need to keep moving forward. I think you got to be able to navigating spaces, especially in education, with people that don't look like you. You know, we know that in education is dominated by white women. And so we have to be able to come in these spaces and not lose our core values. And I think that, you know, when I speak of being strong, you know, we're expected to be strong, but I think in all actuality, it's our strength that really intimidate a lot of folks. And so to me, what it means to be Black, just to sum it up, it means being resilient, being strong, powerful, and you know, and I carry that every day. So that's what it means to be Black, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'd add into all that. I echo everything that everybody said. For me, it's everything to me. Being a Black man is who I am first and foremost. And I guess I see I see myself as a king, right? And I see my Blackness as royalty. And so I exude that in everything that I do. And I try to example that with every interaction that I have, especially with like young males, so that they can see the power within that themselves. I also understand that a lot of our society's barriers were created because of the fact of our greatness, and the equalness or equal in the playing field was to create some of these barriers for us because of that greatness that we do have. And if we ever, as a whole, wake up and realize that, how powerful we'll be as a people.
To me, I just think being a Black male means, first of all, being a pillar in your community. And that pillar being like the foundation. I think Mr. Patterson said something about standing up and being strong. Foundation. We are the backbone of our community. And even when we're outside of the community, we are the face, we're the voice of our people. And to be a Black male is constantly evolving, realizing, getting to know thyself, knowing yourself first, because we can't be the change that we all know is important in our community if we don't understand who we are as a person. Brother Patterson said earlier that he's just always being himself. To be a Black male is to be a transparent person, because the youth need us to be transparent. And I'm pretty sure, I'm preaching to the choir, we all understand this on the day-to-day. It's very important for us to let our children know about the mistakes that we made, so to ensure that they don't make those same mistakes. So being a transparent person, being a constant listener to understand what the youth need, what our sisters need, what our community needs, being observant, taking care of our community, and being able to look in the mirror and being honest with what you see in the mirror, and knowing that you have the power to change that, similar to what Brother Pierre said. You have the power to change that. And once you understand that, it's important to, something that I live by, it's important to lift as you climb. The higher you get, making and ensure that you're bringing others with you to understand their role, and they can work with you to make that change in your community.
So I'll add in on it. And almost everything that can be said has been said, right? But I think a few things that might not have been touched on is, it means you come from a long history of success and brilliance, right? I think that's first and foremost. I think another thing is to recognize that to be Black, and particularly a Black man, means you are among the most culturally generating people in the world. What I mean by that is Black culture is reproduced literally everywhere across this world. Black American culture is everywhere. And that's the brilliance of Black people. And I think that has to be recognized. I think on the other side, it means no matter who you are individually, you cannot control the perception of you. And so what I'm saying is, at all times, you are reduced to being a threat, no matter what capacity you're in. All of us here are highly educated, highly motivated, community-oriented people. but I walked into a luxury apartment today, and I guarantee you the white receptionist who was at the desk ain't never moved that fast in her life. She popped up with a quickness to see what I was doing there. And so it means no matter what you do, no matter who you are, that's always present as well.
That's real talk. I appreciate you brothers sharing your reality, because the question was, what does it mean to you to be a Black man? And so whether someone else said a piece that correlates with your life and your experience, hey, there may be some intersections, but it's great. And I thank you for sharing your piece. Now, these questions, I may not go in the order that we are, but I want to hit them. If it's a question that you don't feel like answering, or you want to wait to the next one, it's all good, but it's going to be open. I want to ask this one. So you brothers that are here, the Black male, how did you get into education? I think everybody's story is different. How did you get into education? I would probably have our young brother who is still in high school. I think he's probably in education because mama said you got to go to school, but I won't answer for him. So the floor is open. How did you get into education?
For me, it was, I grew up from the age of 15 with no parents and the oldest of 6. And so school kind of was an afterthought in the sense that I had to take care of my brothers and sisters. But I was a good student. I was a straight A student. I loved school. I loved learning at all times. And what I realized as I got older is how many of our youth were stuck in situations where they were interested in education or furthering their knowledge base, but home life and the strife and trials and tribulations that they were going through were preventing them from it. And so because of behaviors that were created outside the school and brought into the school, and or their lack of being able to attend, created this mindset that they weren't good enough. And so I got into this work because I wanted to help youth that didn't have that cushion path, if you will, an opportunity to understand and be exposed to opportunity that still allowed them to see life in the way that they dreamed about it, if that makes sense, right? I won't say I didn't get to, I didn't finish high school. I ended up getting my GED when I was 29 years old, and I started my first business in the construction field. But again, allowing them to see that there is more than one path to success was important for me.
I try to keep this short. I got into education. I mentioned a little earlier, I come from a family of pastors. My aunt was teacher of the year in the 80s in Kansas City. And my mother is a public school teacher in Osseo. So, I kind of always think about that it was destined to be, but, it wasn't necessarily my path. I was blessed to have a successful basketball career in high school, went on to play basketball in college, ended up getting hurt where reality set in. Was it, go back home and be with the guys on the block, or continue on a path and try to make something of myself, And so I started school actually in an education program. I'm at MSU Mankato, but it was a struggle. I had issues with my GPA, so they wouldn't let me actually do my clinicals. I'm not ashamed to say this, but I just needed a 2.75. And at the time of my life, I couldn't get a 2.75. So, not being discouraged, I decided to just go on. And, I'm probably the first brother ever that had 200 credits and got an AA degree because I didn't have no idea what I wanted to do. So I started working at Macy's downtown Minneapolis, and they put me in a polo department. I thought I was going to be a fashion designer. That didn't work out too well. So I started working in Robbinsdale in an EBD classroom where I saw nothing but Black boys just crying out for help. And that's when it hit me that, okay, I guess this is God's plan. This is where I need to be. So I ended up getting my degree from some encouragement from some brothers across the metro area in elementary education at Augsburg. And this is kind of where I am now, still in education after 10 years, and just trying to continue to give back to all students, but most importantly, I want to give back to the young man who look like me, because they need me the most right now. So that's my path in a short story.
And I'll jump right in right after Mr. Jones because I kind of have a similar story. After I went to the University of Minnesota on a football scholarship, and after football was over, collegiately, I was still trying to hold on to a career. I was working, ins and out jobs. And, after realizing that was not going to be my path, the next thing I wanted to do is get into coaching. I felt like I needed to be around athletics somehow. I started working at Minneapolis North, coaching, and it was an opportunity for me to work in the Quantum Opportunities program, and that was through Summit Academy. So I took that, just trying to just be around the guys, and I didn't think that education would be my path. But the connections that was made, not only on a football field, but also in the classroom, kind of steered me into, okay, I can possibly, make this a career. I still wasn't sold on that. But then a couple of my former teammates got into education, and I saw that the impact that they were making, on students, and that kind of drew me to pursuing education realistically. And so, needless to say, I got into education. I fell in love with the opportunity to make impact on lives with people that look like me. And so, and I didn't know that would be my path. Here I am, 16 years in. Every year is, some people say they can get burnt out, but personally, every year I think is another opportunity to impact students, and that's what keep me going. And the relationships that are built, it only just fuels the passion, because I love to see people succeed. It's not just people, it's specifically people that look like me, right? Because we were told all these barriers are thrown, this and that. And it's just something that keeps me going every year. And I don't have that educational burnout. We all are stretched thin, but that's what we signed up for. So and my passion keeps me going. So that's how I got into education. And I'm loving every minute of here in Robbinsdale as well.
I'll go now. Honestly, like everybody else, I would say, honestly, growing up, I didn't see myself being a educator. I actually wanted to be an engineer and architect growing up. And so got to college or whatever. And somehow I was just like, oh, okay, well, education is what I think I want to do. And got through Morris Brown and came here to the U. My goal was to get more into research. So I understood education. I was like, oh yeah, this makes sense or whatever, but I wanted to do more like the research. Like I'm a cerebral person. So I wanted to start like kind of analyzing things. And what I started realizing when I got to Minnesota, especially being in the classroom, my first class was a second grade classroom. I taught second grade. The experience that the students who look like me and the young men that look like me was not the same experience that I was receiving growing up down south. So I'm comparing Atlanta, Georgia to Minneapolis, Minnesota, and what school looks like and what the teacher looks like and what's being taught to you and things like that. So I just started analyzing those things, and I realized that I was good at it. Like, I was good at it. I made a difference. And the difference that I was making, I didn't really have to think about it. Like, it came natural. And I received what I was getting from it didn't come every 2 weeks. Like, it was something that I didn't know about. And after we get in some of those other questions, like some of the education, who inspired me, like, I started realizing the things that made me who I was. Those things just started coming out naturally. And I saw the need for that. Because growing up, it wasn't just a one Mr. Vickers. Like, there was tons of Mr. Vickers that were in my building. And I felt that it was disheartening that these young men didn't have somebody that looked like them to assist them how to maneuver through some of the things that life is going to bring to them. Because, like, there's a time and place when you have to put the textbooks behind your back and you have to have a conversation with a young man that's outside of reading, writing, and arithmetic. And that was the thing that year after year that drew me in more. And I guess, like, we all know this, the biggest thing is when that student that you've been working with, when they get it, when you see it and it kind of clicks, that's the most powerful thing in the world. And the second most powerful thing in the world is when you teach the second grade and you have students that graduate from high school and college and come back to you and tell you about the impact that you had on them. And you're like, wow, like, you know, like it's amazing. So, yeah.
I'm gonna hop in real quick. I'm gonna try to be succinct with all my answers. So I went to college for like health sciences. I went to grad school to be an epidemiologist. That was my goal. And I believe that where your passion and talent intersect is where your purpose lies. And so that's what I wanted to find. And I learned early on it wasn't to be an epidemiologist. In fact, it was to be in education, because I believe education is foundational to any quality of life indicator you can look at, right? So I wanted to make the most significant impact in the Black community that I possibly could. So I left health, moved to education. One thing I do want to point out is a similarity between all the stories in case people didn't pick it up. None of us grew up dreaming of being in education. I actually don't think that exists. Black males, young Black boys don't grow up dreaming to be a teacher. The system, the way it's set up as it is now, would never put you in a position to think that that's something you should do, something you could do. Teaching or education is a calling, and all of us were called to it. However, not all who are called come. So there's a ton of Black men who we all know, who you all know, who will be tremendous educators. However, they're not in this space. It's because when we don't put enough people like Mr. Vickers in that second grade classroom, right? Some of his students probably will grow to be teachers because of the impact he had. So the absence of people who look like him or who look like Mr. Jones has an impact. And so the more folk we get like that, the more people we see, the more we start to change the narrative and shift the needle.
But Marcus, I think there's a huge part of me that jumps right on the bandwagon with you, because if I don't see myself in what I see in front of me, then what I see in front of me doesn't resonate with me. You know what I'm saying? I feel you on that. I think that's why some of the things that we've seen recently are so powerful for us to go 2 terms with a Black president. Who ever thought that we would live in a time that we would see that in America? And then to see what just happened and took place on yesterday, have the first vice president be a woman of color. Come on. So when we are allowed to see ourselves in these positions, it gives us that hope. It gives us that vision of saying, you know what, maybe I can do that. What I love about what I hear you brothers saying tonight, even as you were kind of sharing, what does it mean to you to be a Black male? What I hear is this theme of, even though you don't show me a vice president that's a female, even though you don't show me a vice president that's a Black female, even though you don't show me a Black president of the United States, even though you don't show me a Mr. Vickers, at some point in my life, I fight for it and we make it happen. And so that's the reoccurring theme that I'm kind of hearing here, which now leads me to this question that I want to ask. This next question, I want to ask you, you know, because it had to come from somewhere. Growing up, who were the Black males that influenced you? Period. Who were the Black males that influenced you? And no disrespect, but the forum tonight is Black males impacting change in education. So no disrespect to other folks that influenced you, to mom. You know, we always got to big up my mamas. You know, we play football, we'll run through everybody. Pops that showed us how to throw, Pops that push us down, and all we play football, but then we make the touchdown, we knock folks out. We'd be like, hey, mom. So no disrespect to the sisters, to the females, to other individuals, but I want to ask you, growing up, who were the Black males that influenced you? Floor is open.
I'll go ahead and start. Before I start right quick though, Shelby, it's something that I wanted to make a point with, which you and Markus were talking about, as relates to purpose.
Absolutely.
When we talk about educators, I feel like our goal outside of the education system that exists, that tells us this is what education is supposed to look like. It's our job as educators to assist those young individuals to figure out what their purpose in life is. So you're not going through that. So I'm a real big proponent of, as Markus says, using education. Education doesn't just stop with the books. Every day, every interaction, and the way that you communicate and get a student to analyze life and analyze themselves and understand more about themselves, that's when you get the process of them trying to figure out, what is my purpose in life? And thus you have the person who doesn't see the VP but says, I want to do that. Unlock what is your purpose and try to figure out that everybody who's here, that's their mission in life, to figure out what is my purpose. And it's just a blessing that us brothers, we figured out in education, that's what our purpose is. But I feel like that's the role of an educator. Black men that I looked up, I'm gonna say right off the bat, was my grandfather. Story similar to Brother Keenan. My grandfather ran away from a farm in Lowndes County, Alabama, because he didn't want to be a farmer. He moved to Birmingham, lied about his age, and started working in the coal mine. Worked in the coal mine and was able to send my grandmother and my mother. My mother attended Xavier University by just sending her with a check every year. So he was the person in growing up that did everything. So like growing up, that was the man that I looked up to the most, my grandfather. I would have to say, outside of that, initially at the beginning, like my father, And then when we think about educators themselves, I would have to say the number one person that sticks out the most would be in high school, my assistant principal and principal in high school. Those are the two young, those are the men that influenced me the most, had the most impact on me. And when I look back and think about when you asked that initial question, what is it to be a Black male? They walk that on a day-to-day. And with me evolving and figuring out what the direction I'm supposed to go, that was something that was ingrained in my head, that this is what it's supposed to look like. You haven't figured it out yet, but this is exactly what it's supposed to look like.
For me, the Black males that influenced me, Mr. Vickers, I think about, two people come to mind. My father and my grandfather. My father, even when my parents, they split up, he continued to be an influence on me and just giving me nuggets and wisdom. Although I wasn't always listening, he never gave up, knowing that his words in his heart, he knew that they would resonate someday, and they did. My grandfather was a politician in Gary, Indiana in the 70s and 80s. He worked alongside one of the first Black mayors in the country, and Mayor Richard Hatcher. And so I remember, just being at his funeral, and, news outlets were there just covering him. And to me, I understood it, but I didn't quite understand it. And, I have this article that's about 2-3 pages long about my grandfather and what he did for Gary, Indiana in the 70s and 80s, fighting for the rights of the people. And so those are really two big influences. But like Mr. Vickers, I had many coaches from basketball to football who were Black males that also, did what they could to keep me on the path. And, the one thing that I always remember was just that phrase, knowledge is power. Keenan, knowledge is power. And those words, again, still resonate with me. And another influence on me was, I'm a big reader and I love to write. Walter Dean Myers, who was, one of the greatest African-American male authors. And I think about the books Hoops and Slam. Those are two books that I read over and over and over again throughout my junior high and high school years. And, those books allowed me to fall in love with literacy. If I wasn't paying attention to math or nothing else, I was reading Walter Dean Myers books. So those words in those books also were a big influence on me in my life, and just letting me know the power of literacy and the power of words, and how those things together could take you anywhere. So
I've had a number of students who shared the same thing about that book. I remember when it first came out, you just saw, oh, so appreciate you sharing that, brother. Anybody else on this one? Otherwise, I got a few questions that I'm ready to light y'all up with, but I don't want to miss anybody. Okay, so listen, I heard a couple things that was stated, which brings me to this next question. I know that for myself growing up, I had here's what's crazy. I had a very strong dad. But at the same time, I had a very strong mama. Here's what I don't get. My daddy was a really big guy, bigger than I am. my mom was this really small, soaking wet with some rocks in her pocket, probably 110 pounds. I didn't understand how Pops, this big, strong guy, everybody in the family was afraid of him, and more so it was that respect, but the respect came after they was afraid of him. But I had mom as a Sunday school teacher, had dad as a preacher, but my whole life, I don't think I ever had a Black teacher. Had a Black principal. I don't think I myself had a Black teacher. So this question is a three-part question. I want to ask you this. Have you ever had a Black teacher? That's the first part of it. The second part is, did or does that matter? Because maybe you're in college now and you have a Black professor. Did or does that matter? And the last part of it, why? Have you ever had a Black teacher? Did or does that matter? And why?
I'd like to go first.
Go ahead, brother. Do what you do.
Seeing that I'm currently in high school and I'm basically just now finishing my pre-college educational career, I can confidently say I have not had not one Black teacher, as in this is the person I come in the morning and I see teaching my class every day. I've had a lot of Black supporters in the building, such as Mr. Vickers, but no real Black teachers that are educating me, and I can see that, okay, we know this information too. But at the same time, the counterpart, and I could say is like a benefit of not having had these Black teachers is having this armada of supporters at every level and every age. I remember in middle school, there's a coach named Larry Tate, and he's probably, I don't even know, there's not really many words to describe him as a man and the influence and impact that he had on me and changing my whole mentality. He made me embrace books, embrace trying to fill my brain with as much information as I can growing up, embrace language, embrace my culture, not only as an African American, but as an African children of two immigrants. Without that experience, I don't think I'd be where I am today. And I feel as if even though we may not have these Black formal educators that you come in, they teach you, and then you leave, I feel like those personal moments that you do have with all the supporters in the building are valued way more than any teacher could give you. And again, talking about Mr. Tate, it was just like, I remember one day, I may not have been with the right crowd at the time. We was about to get into some, and he pulled me to the side and sat me down and asked me, like, 10 years from now, let's say you just got out of high school and you like football, you want to play football. Looking back at yourself, at the decision that you're about to make right now, how do you think that would impact your chances? And at the time, I wasn't like really mindful of the depth in his question. So I just said, well, I'm not getting arrested. I ain't doing nothing that could, I ain't get caught. I probably said something like that. I don't remember exactly, but then I remember as the conversation went on, it wasn't about what my record would look like. It's about the type of person that I myself would become. Who would I be able to speak to myself? Like, retrospectively, if I were to look back into myself as the man I am right now, and as the man I would be if I kept making these decisions, would they be the same person? Would they have the same heart, the same morals, the same ability to make proper judgment calls? And honestly, I could say no. And without conversations like that and many more, I don't think that a lot of us African American children, male or woman, would be who we grew up to be now.
Thank you for sharing that, brother. Big ups, Mr. Tate. Mr. Tate is still in the district.
I just want to say, thank you for sharing that, Pierre, man. That was very powerful to hear your voice, and you made it personal, and I agree, man. Mr. Tate is solid. If everyone to know him in the district, Mr. Tate is a solid as they come. And so for me to answer that question, have I ever had a Black teacher? I've had my share of Black teachers. But specifically, it wasn't until I really got into college, until I really, embraced what having a Black teacher meant. I kind of skated my way through high school. I played sports, so it wasn't a high expectation. It was just to do enough. And that's what I did. I got to college and I was just doing enough until I took a youth studies class at the University of Minnesota. It was taught by Terrence Kwame Ross. I think he's Dr. Terrence Kwame Ross, and I think he's still teaching here at Augsburg. And he might be still teaching at the University of Minnesota, but it wasn't into that class challenged me because it forced me to dig deep inside. It went to a place where I didn't know I had. I was just kind of skating along. He challenged me. It was the first time that I was ever challenged. And it wasn't until like my second year of college. So for me taking that class, I'm forever grateful for that. And he probably don't even remember me right now. But I still remember that class, that specific class. And if you know the University of Minnesota, it was on the St. Paul campus. I had to take the campus connector. So it was one of those classes where I could have easily skipped. But I was eager to go because I was like, man, like he's challenging me and I'm very competitive. I'm not going to, he was fronting me off in front of class, but I remember that, I remember that he challenged me and I think it does matter, in high school, the research shows that, by having a Black teacher, the dropout rates are lower, the disciplinary issues are lower. And I just think that Black teachers can relate to cultural needs. So that's why I believe that, Black teachers matter, in my opinion.
Can I hop in on this one?
What you do, brother? So we hear.
So I had several Black teachers growing up. First one I think was in 3rd grade, then again 7th grade, then a couple more in high school, and then some in college too. And so being on the side where I did get to see people look like me, it's a tremendous value, tremendous benefit. Speaking of some of the stats that Tony was talking about, I think if you're a numbers person, the data clearly shows you that having a Black teacher is beneficial. You have one Black teacher by 3rd grade, you increase the likelihood of a Black student going to college by 13%. You add a second one, that 13% goes up to 32%, right? You can decrease the likelihood of a Black student dropping out of high school by up to 40%, having one Black elementary school teacher. Having a Black teacher increases the likelihood of a Black student being enrolled into a talented and gifted program. Black teachers have studies show that they have higher expectations of their Black students. So long story short, in my mind, one of the most valuable things a Black student can have is a Black teacher. If you could take those stats and you don't say a Black teacher, And you just say all of those things increase a Black student's likelihood of going to college, decrease their chance of dropping out, increase their chances of being in gifted enrollment. And you said, I have this. You took it to the district. You take it to Dr. Barrage and said, look, I got this thing right here that's going to do all these things for your Black students. She's going to be like, that's the most invaluable thing you can give me. What is it? You say it's a Black teacher. Sign them up. It's the most valuable thing a Black student can have. One of the most valuable things, in my opinion.
And to echo what Marcus is saying, you know, we all know the impact of having a Black teacher and a Black male teacher on Black students and Black males, but also the impact of Black males on all students, in a sense of changing that perception of narrative, especially in suburban schools where we might have classrooms that are diverse, that you may have white students that might never thought that they've seen. Like, it's crazy how, you know, working at Hopkins and having, you know, students from North Minneapolis to Brooklyn Park to students from Minnetonka. And, you know, the first day open house, when white parents come in and see me in the classroom, you know, the eyebrows raised. But at the same time, as the students enter my classroom and they feel how authentic I am, it slowly starts to change the narrative. It also shows that Black males, we're more than just musicians, basketball players, felons. Like, we can do the teaching thing. We're educators. We're knowledgeable. So that really changes the narrative. And speaking to, have I had Black teachers, I echo Marcus as well, and Tony, like, I've had numerous Black teachers growing up. I think about the importance of teachers being in the community. I had Black teachers in my community. I had teachers that lived on my block at the time in the 90s that was able to snatch me up and walk me back down to my house if they saw me doing something I had no business doing. I think about that and the impact it's had on me now. While now I'm in the classroom, it was valuable. You can't understate the value of having those Black teachers and having Black teachers in the community. And it definitely impacted me in many ways, in ways where, you know, when my mother at a point was a single mom and had to work late, I had Black teachers who allowed me to be at their home. Now, I know that look crazy now, but, you know, the relationship that the teachers had with my mother, it was more than just me as a student. It was me as a Black child, a Black male child. And we need to band together to do what we need to do to save this Black male child and make sure that he still has hope, to make sure that he knows that he'll still be fed, to make sure that he knows that somebody cares and loves. And, you know, the strength of Black love, we know is powerful. And we continuously, we need that in the classroom more than ever. So.
That's real talk, brother. Thank you for saying that, because, you know, that was the Black community. You know, we took care of each other's babies, and that's even stemming back all the way back to slavery, when massa would take and sell off mama, or sell off daddy, or sell off mother, and then the child would be left. That parent would ask someone in the tribe, in the community, I need you to take care of my baby. And because it was a regular practice, that happened oftentimes. And ahead of time, I would have a conversation with Brother Markus and say, hey, I know it's a high probability that I'm going to be gone, but will you take care of my son? So that became his godfather, his godmother, that carried on. And so our community has always been that way, where, you know, you can stay over Miss May Lee's house after school or whatever, and Miss May Lee could treat you just like, you know, she's your actual mother, because that was the community. We took care of one another. Is there anyone else who wants to address that question? Okay, so that brings me to this point. I was thinking about how there is this movie called Boys in the Hood. And I know none of you have probably ever seen Boys in the Hood, with Ice Cube and Trey, with Cuba Gooding Jr. And there's a point in that movie where Trey is out and he's driving and he gets pulled over by the police. When he gets pulled over by the police, it's a white cop and it's a black cop. And they pull him over. And those of you that may not know, Trey is the young man that he's not going to get in trouble because he got that black dad at the crib that puts him down, keeps him real south. So Trey ain't going too far left because he don't want to deal with Pops. But when the police pull him over, it's a black cop who is more visceral and dangerous than almost any white cop. And he treats Trey so badly, puts the gun all up on him. And the white cop is just looking at him like, what are you doing? And I remember having conversations with individuals who said that they had a teacher that was like that. And it was a black teacher. Mr. Shelby, why would you share that now? Shouldn't we all be on the same page with making sure that we're unified on it? And I think we do. We want to push the success of what black teachers can do in the classroom. And Brother Markus, I think you are 100% right. But this young man that I was speaking to, when he was telling me about that story and what happened to him, he was saying how that damaged him for so long to have that black teacher that did that to him. As we, and see, here's the unfortunate part. The individuals who are talking with us now and who are listening to this dialogue, they weren't privileged to be in our conversation that we had privately where you all got to share. I want to ask you this. This is a dangerous question, but we're gonna get real. So strap in your seatbelts. What was the most hurtful or painful experience in your education? What was the most hurtful or painful experience that you had in education for you? Brother Pierre, I want you to know you can feel free to answer 100, brother. You know what I'm saying? You know, you're a student still. So we got your back.
Then I'll take the forefront on the discussion now. Throughout school itself, I've run into 3 separate occasions where I felt like I was put into a box. And understandably at first, well, no, not understandably. I used to think that it was okay to be put into that box. There was an occurrence, it was in 6th grade. And at the time, it was like, oh, okay, a lot of kids are taking math and all the people that don't really know math gonna get put into extended math. That was like the little thing back in 6th grade. And you look at that and be like, okay, why is the entire class 95% Black? And then like maybe 2 Latino kids and 1 Somalian girl. Like you just look at it and be like, this ain't the same math class that I just had 2nd period. And I look at that and be like, okay, this don't make no sense because you trying to tell me that we all just bad at math, like we all just can't do math. So I went up to the teacher that taught the class, and I was a little aggravated. We spoke for about 30 minutes and she called my parents. So after I went home, I came back the next day and was called into the office to speak with the principal, her, and a guidance counselor. They had believed that I was taking it the wrong way, that the entire class was basically mostly Black people. When in my school, TMS, Plymouth Middle School, it was, I'm gonna go a wild guess and say maybe 50, 60 Black kids. And in the class, in and of itself, it was 35 kids. So more than half of the total amount of Black kids in the entire school were in this class. And a large number of the second half was in the second period of this class. And during the discussion with the principal, the guidance counselor, and the teacher, it was brought to my attention that, okay, let's look at the grades, We started looking at the grades, and we looked at my grades in particular from the first semester of sixth grade. And I had a C- in our math class, whatever math class that was. And I felt as if just for having a C- doesn't mean I need additional help in math and to be put into this class, which I spoke on that just for the fact that I didn't want to be in the class. But then this is when I realized that I was being put into the box, because the teacher made a comment, and I'll never forget the way that she said it. It was more in her facial features and the way that she looked at me than in the words themselves. She said, well, someone like you in your situation would need to be in this class. And then rapidly, like without hesitation, the principal checked her. Without hesitation, the principal checked her. So I knew that I wasn't the only one. I wasn't taking it a different way. I wasn't feeling some type of way because of what she said. The principal quickly checked her and told her to exit the room that we were in. And the next week, it was changed from being what was it called? Like the secondary math class or whatever, to being like not a help, oh, we're here to help you because you're falling back type class. It was made to like be seen as, there was an announcement where they made it to make it be seen as if, oh, those who are exceeding in math can be in this class. And the simple idea that had to happen at all, like this was a whole thing, period, where there were kids put into a class, probably kids that were way smarter than me, kids that I knew for a fact did not have bad grades the previous semester, were also in the class with me. The fact that this had to be a situation to the point where the perception of who gets to be in the class had to be changed is what really shocked me. And that's what like started opening my eyes a little bit to the occurrences happening around me as I go through middle school. And then I got to high school, where it was in an English class where it's an AP class. I took the class and I was asked to basically not take the class for the rest of the semester. So to drop out of the class and take a regular English course. And that's when I really like was hurt, because I've always like empowered myself by saying that, okay, if I put my mind to it, I can do it. If it's written in a book, if it's spoken in a lecture, I can take it in and I can lock it out and I can lock it down. That's been what I empower myself on. But being told that, oh, I don't think that you should continue in this course made me feel kind of stupid. Because one, I'm basically representing my culture because there's only 2 Black people in the class and I'm the only Black man in the class. So that's already like 2 tiers of constraints that I myself must uphold. And being the only one told, even though there were others in the class with this in the same situation that I was in, I'm not going to get too deep into it, but in the same situation that I was in, I was the one that was told that I should withdraw because apparently in the next semester there were those that could be more capable of succeeding and passing the AP test. So after being told that in another sum of words, that's when I went home and I like really felt the pain of not being able to represent, not being able to have the same advantages because of my skin color. Feeling like I get all I'm the first one to be kicked out, but the last to be let in. That's how I was feeling. So I strived, of course, to exceed in the class. And there was even a time where the superintendent stepped into the class, Dr. Cook stepped into the class, and we had a discussion. We actually had a panel just like this actually, and I made certain points that touched him and had him speak with the teacher afterward for a certain. He spoke to her and told me the account of the conversation, and I had told him what I'm telling you all now, and he had explained to me that to her, she was just saying that because of her false perception of my capabilities. And he then continued by explaining to me that I shouldn't let the perception of others, Black or white, superior or someone younger than me, affect what I feel I'm capable of.
Brother Pierre, can I say this? What you have just shared, we are out of our time, but I want to thank you for your response because the question was about what was the most hurtful or painful experience. You shared the hurtful and painful piece, but you also came around and shared the outcome and how you got some positive out of that to help you to be where you are. And I really appreciate that. Before we close, I want to do, this is going to be hard for you gentlemen, but I want to do a 10-second, either one word or a 10-second worth of words response. This is the last question that we go home on. You got 10 seconds or you got one word, however you want to respond to it. This question is, what do you feel can be done now to increase the success of Black students? What do you feel can be done now to increase the success of Black students? One word or 10 seconds.
Oh,
Go ahead, Marcus.
are you?
I would say implement more academic and social support programs for African-American students, specifically African-American males and African-American females at all levels, K through 12.
Mine is similar. I say integrate some Black history and culture into any curriculum.
Thank you, sir.
I think I would say similar. I think there needs to be policy change, make a change with curriculum to ensure that all students are being seen, similar to what Marcus and Mr. Jones were saying. Make equity change training mandatory for all, and not just the training itself, but I feel like that there needs to be more evaluations of buildings as well as teachers after that training is given. And then I think in addition to that, as educators, just realize that we should always remember that we need to give students the tools to dismantle this system, because the system itself needs to change.
Agree with you, Brother Vickers. Appreciate that.
I'm gonna just say one word is just investment.
Ooh, powerful.
Mine would be, my one word would be exposure, exposing children of color to more ways to be successful in life besides just basketball and rap music.
Powerful. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your words of wisdom and your insight and sharing your stories and your background with us this evening. You have powerful stories and you're doing some great things. I want to encourage those of you who are listening tonight to feel free to look in the chat. I believe there should be some information to contact these gentlemen who have shared on this evening. Brother Jackson had a conflict of interest this evening, so he had to step out. He conveyed his apologies, but he stepped out because he's doing the work. And so he has a number of businesses that he's doing, and he's a coach. And so there's a number of things that's happening. So I wanted to share that with you. Thank you so much to our technical support and to those of you who have come. And also thank you so much to our interim superintendent, Dr. Stephanie Barrage, for being here. Do you want to say anything before we log off, ma'am?
I do. I just want to tell all the panelists, thank you. This was amazing. And let me tell you what it is. I'm going to give you my one word, authentic. This was an authentic conversation. And this is just what we wanted to come from our series. We want to have authentic conversations to continue the dialogue about how we can make change in our district to serve our students. Thank you so much for all that you're doing.
Thank you. And again, please feel free to put in the chat if you have any suggestions for future topics. Please do that. And again, thank you for this wonderful evening and thank you for being here. Have a great night.